In the past 3 months, ISD has picked up, detained 3 young boys under the ISA. 3 different cases, but all 3 planned to attack in Singapore. One would have done it during the June holidays if ISD had not arrested him in time. So just in time, he was going to do it. First case relates to a 15-year-old. We don't mention names if they are under 18 years old. So this boy, 15 years old, Sec 4 student, he was reading a lot of extremist content, and he planned to carry out a mass casualty attack in Singapore in support of ISIS. So he researched on homemade explosives. He formed online chat groups. He tried to recruit others. So quite extensive. Second case, the 19-year-old boy, Tan Junji. He was again exposed to a lot of online extremist content, from foreign preachers. He started 4 years ago. He read a lot of pro-ISIS and other radical content. He considered himself to be a member of ISIS by the start of this year, 2026. And he made 2 attack plans. One targeted SAF officers at Sembawang Air Base. The other targeted LGBTQ students in his own school. He also attempted to conduct cyber attacks against websites of Muslim organizations which he thought were deviant. The third case, the youngest, 14-year-old boy, Sec 2, radicalized by what we call composite violent extremism, COVE. This was through online first-person shooter games, on Roblox, and consuming violent content online. And he wanted to conduct mass casualty stabbing attack at his secondary school. And he wanted to use a knife from home. He wrote out, quite advanced, he wrote out a 21-page attack manifesto. It set out attack plans, choice of weapons, attack targets, non-Muslim teachers and students in his school. Quite serious and quite advanced in his plans. He was going to live stream his attack, pledge allegiance to ISIS, and then take his own life. He was arrested just weeks before the June school holidays because he had planned to attack during the holidays. So 2015, if you take 2015, since 2015, last 11 years, a total of 23 young people below the age of 20 or below, have been dealt with by ISD. So you see, young people, younger and younger persons are getting radicalized. We see similar trends overseas too. Last month in Australia, a 13-year-old boy was charged. He was planning a mass attack at a primary school. In Philippines, there was school shooting by, two young persons, 14 and 15 years old. 3 students were killed. We have strict laws against guns and explosives, effectively enforced, but knives are simple and easy to get.
So what can we do to address this online radicalization of youths?
We, MHA, working with MDDI and other agencies, we take a lot of action. We block websites, but it's impossible to block everything. So tackling harmful extremist content has to be an effort that everyone is involved in. Family and friends are actually in the best position to detect possible radicalization by someone near to them. In all 3 cases, the boys had shared their extremist views with those around them. One added his family members and friends into chat groups where he spread pro-ISIS content. Another shared ISIS videos with his friends and schoolmates. So we need the public, parents, to stay vigilant, safeguard children. Whenever there is such harmful online content being shared, you need to click and say, look, what do I do about it? And it takes less and less time for people to become radicalized and decide to become violent. That is why it is extremely important to report early, and that allows for intervention early. And you know what? You're actually helping that kid or helping that person because we, ISD, MHA, can prevent them from harming themselves and harming others. And in the early stages of radicalization, we can arrange for measures like counseling. We don't even need to arrest them or detain them. we can do it without detaining through counseling. So I really encourage everyone to do your part, our part, to keep Singapore safe.
Radicalization can affect anyone, regardless of age or background. And at MOE, we're very concerned by this growing number of children and young people who have been radicalized online and for whom ISD has had to take action. We're also very deeply concerned for the 3 young people who have been radicalized in these recent cases. While ISD will focus on their rehabilitation, at MOE we will support their education while they're in detention. We will work together to try to help them to recover and move on positively and purposefully. I know that parents, teachers and students will be concerned about this trend of young people who are falling victim to online radicalization. And some will also be very concerned about school safety because some of these affected children were prepared to harm others in the community as well as within their schools. At MOE, we'll continue to work closely with our colleagues at MHA to tackle this challenge of youth online radicalization through 3 prongs. 1 is education, 2 would be prevention, and 3 would be emergency response. On the education front, we already incorporate relevant content from CCE, which is Character and Citizenship Education, across our curriculum to help our students discern and to reject harmful online content, including extremist ideologies. We will see how we can further strengthen this effort. On the prevention front, we've been working closely with ISD to run counter-radicalization outreach activities. We also run workshops, exercises for our school principals, for our teachers, our school counselors, as well as our student welfare officers, to help them spot warning signs in their students early and to be able to act more swiftly. Of course, our students who are PSLs or peer support leaders, we also train them to help look out for their fellow schoolmates. And our students and PSLs are encouraged to speak to a trusted adult, speak to their teacher, or speak to a school leader if they have worries about a friend or classmate. In fact, they will then be helping their friend. One of the recent cases was reported by someone in school, in fact, who picked up the signs of radicalization and had alerted authorities. We are encouraged by this as it shows that counter-radicalization efforts are bearing fruit on the ground, and we will work with MHA to do more on this front. Now, an important part of prevention work involves tackling harmful online content, which can lead to children being radicalized. The authorities already block access to terrorist sites, and our schools block harmful content on students' PLDs or personal learning devices. At MOE, we support what MHA and MDDI are doing to better safeguard Singaporeans, especially our children and young people, from harmful content. But even as we strengthen our education and prevention efforts, we must also be prepared for emergency response. So we've been working with our schools, as well as our institutes of higher learning, to run workshops, organize drills and exercises, in order to prepare for potential threats that may come from within as well as outside school, so that everyone is familiar with what they should do if a crisis does arise. And in that regard, we'll continue to enhance our emergency response to address new and evolving threats. But ultimately, as SM said, our strongest defense is this collective vigilance and our preparedness among Singaporeans and also amongst the school communities. So we'll continue to work closely with ISD, with our community partners, with parents, with educators, to look out for children and young people who may be vulnerable to extremist influence and provide them guidance as well as support.
Good afternoon, SM. This is Daryl from Lian Zaobao. The 14-year-old was arrested only about a month before his planned attack, you mentioned, just in time.
A few weeks,
just in time. How concrete and operational was his plan? And how close was Singapore to an actual mass casualty attack? Does MHA consider intervention at this stage sufficiently early, or warning signs should have been detected sooner? And for Minister Desmond, this 14-year-old, as mentioned in the release, had listed teachers and schoolmates as targets, partly because of how he felt in schools. So did the school know earlier that he felt bullied and was consuming this violent content, or was it being raised that he was under pressure from teachers and other students? And how would MOE review whether existing safeguards could have detected him earlier?
On your first question, he had gotten quite close to carrying out his plans. It is worrying, but every case is worrying. I've said this many times before. ISD and MHA have got to get it right every single time. The would-be attacker needs to get it right only once. A few weeks, and he had planned. Part of the framework is that people are getting radicalized much faster, and it's really not possible to always pick it up at the beginning, which is why I emphasized the importance of family and friends. The moment you see something not quite right, please report. Don't just leave it to ISD and the police, because, we try our best, and so far, every single time we have been successful in intervening. But don't take that for granted. This was close.
Well, I mentioned earlier that in this case, we were fortunate that someone in the school picked up this case and reported to the authorities. And I think that's important because it shows that our school community, educators, counselors, peer support leaders, students, and other people in the community, in the school environment, having undergone some of these workshops, having been given some training, having participated in these drills, learning some of this in their CCE lessons, being very mindful about telltale signs that may suggest that a friend, a student, a classmate, a loved one is falling sway under the influence of extremist ideologies, that they should report in order to help and to protect these individuals from harming themselves and harming other people. We need to do more on this front. I mentioned earlier that prevention, education, and contingency planning are all important pillars, but ultimately we need everybody to play their part in order to keep our school environment safe and indeed to keep Singapore safe.
Fabian from CNA Digital. So, do you think such cases will have an impact on the Malay community here, or the students in schools, people at workplaces? And secondly, in many of the cases involving youth radicalization, social media is where they found the content, right? So, is a social media ban the solution to this?
Let's take your first question, which is a very important question. So you ostracize or you look at the Malay community with fear and suspicion. What happens? Is that going to make Singapore a better place? Is it going to make it a safer place? Since the 9/11 attacks in 2001, 25 years, quarter of a century, that sort of thing has happened in some countries abroad where the Muslim population is looked at with suspicion and fear. Has it made them safer? Has it made them a better place? For 25 years, our mantra has been, and we have been successful in telling people, those who want to do you harm are a very small extremist minority. The majority are law-abiding Singaporeans. They are the same as us, and you don't draw artificial lines. The moment you draw these lines, that's when it becomes self-fulfilling. And we have been working very hard to build the bonds between the communities, make sure our Malay Muslim Singaporeans feel the same as everybody else, in every aspect of society and life, and for Singaporeans of all races, religions, Chinese, Indians, others, to recognize that we are all one, and we are one together in this. So if we go down that route of looking at somebody else with suspicion based on skin color or religion or race, we are asking for trouble. We are a very small place. And in this small place, we either survive together in a small boat as one Singapore, or we are all in trouble. So let's make sure we don't let a few radicalized individuals poison the whole atmosphere. And it's important for the majority community, Chinese and the other Singaporeans, to make sure we continue to adopt a total overall perspective and make sure our Malay Muslim Singaporeans feel as part of the one community, part of the brotherhood, sisterhood.
Desmond, Sabrina from CNA TV here. I wanted to ask, given that 2 out of 3 of the attacks were targeting schools specifically, will there be any stepped-up security measures at schools? And in terms of the drills that you mentioned, as well as schools, how will MOE balance this atmosphere of vigilance with also making sure that the students are happy and enjoying their time in Siam?
So the first question. You know, schools are open spaces. You can't turn every school into a garrison or a cantonment. Then it won't feel like a school. And I've made the point about public buildings too in the past. Singapore, if you want the majority of people to feel comfortable, confident, you have to have a balance between security and also free movement. People want to live without having to go through a whole series of restrictions. You can't turn Singapore into a garrison. You can't turn schools into a garrisons. You can't turn public buildings into a garrisons. So you have the ISD, you have the police. You have to have a vigilant society that looks out for each other, looks out for some things that are not quite right. But at the same time, we have to accept that there is only so much you can do in terms of physical security. And then on top of that, of course, within schools and within other places, you train people to be alert and understand security. You want to add on?
No, I agree with SM. It is very natural when you have something like this happen, that people's instinct is, let's tighten up, let's put perimeter fences, let's do 100% checks, let's go around and check every bag, have metal detectors and so on. That cannot be the main kind of approach that we take when it comes to this. As SM said, there are multiple layers of vigilance, of training, of contingency planning, and even on the security side, we have measures in place, right? Physical measures with CCTVs, and our security staff in our schools and institutes of higher learning have some training to look out for matters of concern or people of concern, and they can do selective back checks and other checks where necessary. But schools are places where people learn, they spark the joy of learning. They are places where people must feel comfortable learning, and certainly not every institute of higher learning is a gated, closed community. There are open campuses where we have people coming in and out and free flow of ideas and they study. So we want to make sure that we strike the right balance and put in place the right measures through getting people more aware of what they need to look out for, and strengthening this overall community of vigilance so that we look out for one another, care for one another, and take the necessary steps to protect the community.
SM, if I could just jump back to that point about youths encountering dangerous content online leading to their self-radicalization. Do you think a social media ban is a solution to it?
A number of approaches have been tried in other countries. Social media bans have been imposed in Australia. UK has discussed it. France, as Parliament has looked at it, with varying degrees of effectiveness. I know MDDI has been speaking publicly about what can be done to protect our young people, not just from extremist online content, but also the harmful effects of social media on young people and their brain development and their psychological development is, I think, reasonably well known. It's becoming quite well researched. And it is something that how to deal with it, whether a ban is the best way or some other way, this is a matter that MDDI is looking at. But harmful extremist content, when we come across it, we block it. But as I said, in today's world, it's not possible to block everything. And one of them got radicalized through Roblox and playing violent stuff and then consuming other content.